Hello, and welcome to Global Data Themes Instant Insights. At Global Data, we define a theme as something that keeps a CEO awake at night, as businesses that invest in important themes will succeed, and those that don't will fail.
Hello, and welcome back to Instant Insights. I'm Sarah Coop, and today I'll be chatting to Nick Wyatt and Hannah from GlobalData's Travel and Tourism team. And we'll be discussing some of their top predictions for the travel industry in 2023. Hi, Nick. Hi, Hannah. How are you both doing?
Yeah, hi, Sarah. I'm well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, good, thanks. Not bad. How are you doing, Hannah?
I'm good, thank you too. How are you? I'm good.
Yeah, all good. Thanks a lot for coming on. And let's jump into your first prediction. So China has adopted a zero COVID model, which has obviously disrupted travel. What do you guys expect to happen in 2023?
Yeah, I think first of all, what I would say on that is that China has kind of been the burning question on everybody's lips. Sort of pre-COVID, it was the sort of largest source market globally. So, there were a lot of destinations that were bringing in a lot of tourists from China, a lot of business travelers from China. So, it's been a big question of when is that going to come back online? I think when you talk to people within the travel and tourism space, be that destination marketing, hotels, airlines, airports, whatever, everybody's kind of said that will be when, we can really say the recovery's happened, is when that major source market is kind of back online and back in play. So it's been a big question. So I think the prediction is that will remain the case, that people will be really, really keen on sort of when is the Chinese source market coming back, and when it is coming back, how do we attract it and get it back up to speed quickly. But the hope is that it will mean that that source market will come back online in some kind of meaningful way in 2023.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's had a huge impact, obviously, on travel, also on things like supply chains as well. But yeah, it's kind of been a really long-standing issue. Hannah, have you got anything to add in line with that?
Obviously, what Nick said, no one really knows what's going to happen with the Chinese source markets. Some people are saying sort of latter half of 2023. Others are saying more towards 2024. But I think one of the big things to sort of note with the return of the Chinese source market, whenever it may be, is likely that they're going to be sort of traveling in a very different way. So you can see some sort of their preferences have changed. There's a lot more interest in sort of health and wellbeing tourism, a lot more interest in sort of domestic tourism. We've seen a big surge in domestic tourism. So we might also see them sort of traveling to different destinations, or sort of historically, Chinese travelers have liked to travel in groups. But obviously, where group travel hasn't been an option for the Chinese source market, we might see more family travel, more couple travel. So I think that's a really important thing to note for the return of the Chinese source market, is they likely won't be traveling in the same way.
That's really interesting. Yeah, a kind of shift in those kind of historical patterns. Let's move on to your second prediction, which is around ESG. So obviously, ESG has been discussed at length in 2022, even though we've had various geopolitical and macroeconomic issues which might have overshadowed those discussions. But what are your predictions for travel and tourism companies and ESG in 2023?
Yeah, I think the key thing to watch out for is a sort of an uptick in concrete action. I think that's where we've seen a shift in travel. It's been spoken about in this industry for a long time, ESG, and there have been accusations, I think, down the years of, people paying lip service, companies paying lip service. I think that we are seeing a shift away from that now, and we are seeing some actual action happening, meaningful action. There's some really good examples. If you look at things like the Six Senses energy positive hotel in Spa. So, there are positive steps being taken, things like sustainable aviation fuel. I think we're seeing progress there as well in terms of its development and its adoption. There's also things happening around, reducing water usage, reducing food wastage.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I guess the travel and tourism industry is historically kind of, quite poor for ESG, as a lot of companies are. But, 2023 will be interesting to see stopping paying lip service and actually having some action there. What do you think, Hannah?
I definitely agree with Nick in that sense. I think, there's still a lot of work to be done. I mean, like, our data shows that younger generations of travellers are much more interested in eco-travel and conscious of their impact on the environment, which extends into their travel patterns. So companies really need to take account of this. I think especially as sort of the younger generations are digitally native and very adept at holding companies to account via social media, or even sort of with their wallet, they'll sort of vote with their wallet.
One thing I would just add on this is I think, it's easy to use kind of ESG and particularly the environmental sustainability angle as a stick with which to beat companies in the travel and tourism space. But actually, I do think there's an element where travelers need to look at themselves a little bit as well, like how can they alter their behaviors? I do think that this is not a one-sided argument. I think travelers do have to take some responsibility for themselves and their actions as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think that fits really nicely into our ESG feedback loop, which is a framework that we've created at GlobalData, where it talks about that kind of pressure from stakeholders to take ESG action. If there's the pressure from travelers, then obviously companies are going to want to change. But if it's not there, it kind of needs to be a two-way thing. And lastly, which markets do you think are going to emerge as top tourism players in 2023?
I think for me, I'm looking at the GCC region. I think obviously Saudi Arabia jumps out immediately because of the sort of incredible levels of investment that are going on there. What they're doing is I think on a scale that we've not seen before. With the Giga projects and putting tourism as a real central pillar of Vision 2030. But it's not just limited to the kingdom. I think, when you look at other sort of countries in the GCC, again, you're seeing an increased sort of focus on tourism in places like Oman. Qatar's obviously just had the World Cup. So I think for me, I would be keeping an eye on the GCC, but obviously Saudi Arabia is the one that sort of stands out because of the focus and the investment levels.
Perfect. Thanks, Nick. Hannah, what are your thoughts on this?
I think Saudi Arabia specifically is one that Nick picked out. And so part of their Vision 2030 is that they are wanting to attract 100 million visitors by 2030. I mean, they've invested sort of trillions of US dollars. So it's really interesting. But I think it's important to know that obviously we just talked about ESG even. And there are going to be a number of challenges to contend with. So sort of the first one would be environmental degradation. Sort of like how are they designing their projects? Things like NEOM, the Red Sea project, the Arabian Highlands. They might need to consider more of an element of environmental sustainability. And obviously 100 million visitors by 2030 annually is a very big target, but there's sort of, as we come out of COVID, there's places all around the world that are trying to attract more visitors. So they're going to see a very intense competition with countries and cities worldwide to attract that number of visitors.
Yeah, I think one thing to just sort of clarify there is that 100 million target is obviously an extremely aggressive target, but that's a sort of mix of international and domestic travel. And so, a bit sort of like what Hannah mentioned earlier about China and the sort of growing importance of the domestic market there. I think that's something that shouldn't be overlooked. And I think that the Giga project, absolutely right, that you do need to bear in mind, the environmental impact of these things. But these are extremely technologically advanced, tech-enabled projects that are going on. And so all of the solutions that are sort of currently available are in play here to sort of minimize the impact of the project.
I was going to say futuristic, but not really, as it's happening right now. But no, that sounds really, really interesting. Thank you very much, Nick and Hannah, for those predictions. Thanks for listening. And from us at GlobalData Thematic Intelligence, see you next time.